Well, welcome everybody. So today we're going to talk about Game of Thrones, the second edition, and how to play it as a two-player game, and also to make it into a campaign. So, um, firstly, why would I want to play Game of Thrones, the second edition, as a two-player game, or how I came up with the variant, was because I noticed that it's really hard to find people to commit such a long time to any kind of war game. You're looking at basically about, I say, an average of 2 hours to 3 hours, and with Game of Thrones, for me, usually might even go to 4 to 6 hours with negotiations. So I found that the game wasn't hitting the table a lot, and so I decided to come up with a two-player variant to play the game. And basically, those games allow the game to be hit the table a lot more, because those games that you're looking at about an hour 15 maybe. If you're really taking a bit of time, maybe an hour and a half. And so basically, I think anything that allows the game to be played more often, and importantly, usually you can find one player to play a board game. So and this is my favorite game, so anything to hit the table more is a good thing. Okay, so how I'm going to structure this is, first I'm going to explain how to play it as a two-player game, and then after that I'll explain how to play it as a campaign. So first things first, how to play as a two-player game. Firstly, to manage the whole issue of time, what I did was divide the board. Okay, when you play a two-player game, you're not going to play the whole board. Alright, I mean, you can, but I feel that, again, to make the time shorter, what I did was I divided the board into north, the Midlands, which is the Baratheons and the Lannisters, and the south, which was the Martells and the Tyrells. Now, I don't want to keep moving the camera up and down, so I'm going to show this part of the board. Alright, so with the north, the Starks and the Greyjoys, for example, we divided it minus Seaguard. Alright, you would have minus Seaguard along this river, and everything to the north is playable. Now, there will always be certain imbalances because the game wasn't made to be a two-player game, and of course through the design of Westeros itself. But like I said, I play usually for story. But if you wanted to balance it out, you can actually use those defense tokens, such as the Eyrie and all that, and place it at certain locations to balance it out. But if you're into the story, like for me, I just place it like the Greyjoys would follow their setup. All the setups are the same. Alright, so the Greyjoys set up, the Starks will set up, and I personally, after playing it myself, I feel that some of the house abilities actually make up for certain imbalances, such as with Greyjoys with their sea abilities. They could keep raiding along this whole area here, while the Starks, when I played them, had to keep defending, and basically this area here became the main part, which we did a lot of negotiation and mostly attacking. Now, the flaw, of course, of a two-player game is the negotiation aspect. You won't get those fantastic negotiations, but you actually can have pretty good ones, such as, I feel personally, it usually came down to more of a timing issue, such as, I would leave Mont Kalin if you don't attack me for 3 turns. It's a lot of trust in a two-player game, and to be honest, with Game of Thrones, you never know whether that come true. And so actually the negotiation aspect is still there. It just takes a very different form to a large 3 to 4 player game, or even a 6-player game. And also, as a two-player game, everything else is the same, but we remove the winning ability of 7 castles, because obviously when you divide the board, there's no way you can really get 7 castles unless you really take over everything. And also, to cut time short, there's always and this really depends on your players. I always have the rule that anyone can capitulate and surrender. Like with me in the north, when I played the Starks versus the Greyjoys, I actually pushed the Greyjoys all the way back to here, and the person capitulated, like how he said in real life the Greyjoys would have probably done. Not everybody fights to the death. But it depends on the group. If you're playing a one-off and the person doesn't want to give up and all that, also basically I guess you can play it that way, but I just remove it because in my story, the storyline I was going for, the fight till you die thing usually doesn't fit the houses. As example, the Greyjoys and maybe the Starks would have, but not the Greyjoys, or even like the Tyrells maybe. So depends on your group. You can fit along. Just like the balancing issue with the defense tokens, you can put that in to balance the game if it's a one-off. But for me, the storyline, I just kept it simple so we could finish the game and get more games in basically, rather than get stuck on these very massive rules. Now, that's for a two-player game. So now we're gonna go into a campaign. All right. For campaign, basically, like I said, I divided the board into three parts: north, mid, and south. And the story goes that each of all these rebellions came out at the same time. So the board basically was divided almost in half. I chose the Starks, the Lannisters, and the Tyrells, and my brother chose the Martells, the Baratheons, and the Greyjoys. So because it all happened at the same time, they couldn't support each other. So actually we could play like example the north first, then the mid, then the south, then culminate in this final huge battle, which even as a two-player game took I think 4 hours. So what happened was that basically we played and I pushed with the Starks all the Greyjoys back to here, and like I told you, they capitulated, so I actually got them into my alliance. In the Lannisters versus the Baratheons, I pushed them all the way back in a treaty, because when the turn ends, when the game ends, they actually have to make whoever's winning or not winning, we actually came up with always like a treaty if the person isn't wiped out, or you have to bend the knee if whoever's losing basically, or either make a treaty deal if the game looks like it's evening out. So I actually pushed the Baratheons all the way back to Dragonstone, one piece of land, and I lost the south, and with the Tyrells I only kept Highgarden. Alright, so as I say, I mixed in the other videos, I mix other board games, and basically with the final battle, all my alliances were pushing south against the one land of the Dragonstone and alliance of the Martells. But due to some other board game situations, the Starks were stuck in the north, and the Greyjoys, Lannisters, and the Tyrells were pushing. Now actually the whole campaign ended with the Treaty of Blackwater, which I made a mistake because I did a massive miscalculation, and I actually signed a peace treaty when I didn't have to, and probably would have won the game. But those stories of another time. In the campaign rules, the way I've made it was that to have these more massive battles, because in the rules of Game of Thrones 2nd edition, you only can have 4 units in one land. Alright, now for me, because of these massive alliances, I made it so that, and also it's more thematic to me, you can have 4 units of one faction in the land. They're supplied by their own thing. So for example, if I had in Harrenhal, alright, let's say the Starks had 4 units here, the Baratheons, if they were allied, could move 4 units in here. Alright, so you had these massive battles. In fact, we had these massive sea battles because we kept pumping units, because the sea transport was inherently important by the end. Alright, so that's one rule which I absolutely like. If you feel it's imbalanced, you can remove it, but I feel it added to the theme of these massive battles when the alliances finally came together. And the other one was a bit finicky. This rule I don't know whether I'll apply again, because there's so many problems that come up with like, what if this happens, is that if you surround a particular land with an army on it, then they have no supplies, and basically they get destroyed. And again, I don't know whether I applied this, because when we did it, there's so many questions like, oh look, there's a river here, so you could transport supplies through it and all that. That one I'm not too sure I'll apply again, but I just putting it out there. And if anybody's interested, maybe I can refine it more, but I don't know, that one didn't go out too well. But I just putting it out there because, like I say, if you're going for story base and your opponents are okay with it, actually it's quite thematic, because you never want anywhere to get surrounded. So well, anyway, there you go. That's a Game of Thrones, the 2nd edition, how to play as a 2-player game and a campaign. I hope you enjoy, and till next word.